Hondo, my 100-page.
We're good.
We're good again?
Yeah.
Sorry, we got the backup camera for gas. My 100-page outline here. When we get more people in, because there will be people once school gets out, a lot of people coming in, and I'll
So
talk.
anything in there about what you think to be the problems with Buffalo and its economic growth?
Yeah, I want you to talk about that. That's a
That is a good one.
That's definitely a great one. When the news gets here.
Please, you gotta be kidding me, because this is all still included as part of the speech, so don't think I'm not giving a speech here. A speech is what a man makes it, but, I mean, I've got a section.
No, but Jeff.
Stop a second. I've got a section on
They said
restoring
this
Buffalo,
camera, so we
Western
gotta
New
talk
York.
about that.
On restoring Buffalo, Western New York, and their economies. That is one of the longest sections I had in this entire outline. Rivaling that of abortion, gun control, tax policy, spending.
See, that's what you ought to put in there. You told us something to attract this area of people, like politics and stuff, they love it.
Well, that's why when there's news here, I'm talking about interesting things. I figure when they come in, like, Channel 2 originally was going to come back at 5:30 in the morning. I don't know why they're coming all night, but I was going to save the Buffalo part for when they came. Hey, you don't think I'll collapse standing for days, or do you? No. Okay, good. I'll be good. I'll get sore, right?
We all have cell phones. We can call 911 if anything happens.
Yeah, I'm good.
Hopefully not, but that's just.
You know, I was thinking very strongly about what exactly makes a power tie.
Well, there you go.
Because, well, we'll be down with 25 hours, I have plenty of time to talk about civil screening topics and just take us off real life.
One of the sections.
You know, the question is, with the power tie, well, as I think the question should be, not what in particular attracts the most attention to the tie. I mean, ultimately, the goal of a power tie should not be what attracts most attention to the tie. It should be what serves the image of the individual the best. You know, at what point, how you doing, Dave? Yeah, this is Dave. Dave has been equipping us with our technical support. Dave's also somewhat of a boy genius.
It went out, and then I had to set it back up.
You know, the question is not what will draw most attention to the tie.
I don't know.
Hell, I could put on this wild, multicolored African striped tie. That probably draw a lot of attention to the tie. But that would make me seem powerful. That would just speak to the power of the tie itself. A true power tie is not one that attracts attention itself. It's one that has the strength, but at the same time the subtlety. The subtlety required to bring the particular image that the speaker is looking for. And that's what I think I have with this. It's not in your face, but it's strong. It's strong and silent. Strong silent tie, which is important in building the image. So,
I want to hear the tributes and commentary of this round and this poem.
yeah, that's actually a good idea, Dan, because we're kind of around lunchtime.
that means we
Most
have to
people
come
would be
back.
relaxing, working even less than they usually probably work. And everyone, you know, we used to talk about this when I would work out. Everyone, everyone loves lunchtime. You know, when are we all for lunchtime? We always talk about that, right? That this is usually that time, so I'll give myself a little bit of a break when we get to that. And talk about how much I dislike this crowd. I don't want to overlap too much. No, I'm not even talking about the crowd. I don't want to talk too much about anything in particular which might overlap with the Hundo, because I do have a section there called The Ideal Teacher. And I'm more than convinced. I'm more than convinced that for 15 minutes, I'll be able to talk about exactly an ideal teacher. So I was on the phone with Eve last night. You know, she's telling me she's coming. And I told her, you know, Eve's not giving this 25-hour speech, and she didn't exactly believe me. So I convinced her that I was actually doing it. I guess at some point she believed me. Probably was quicker to actually trust that what I was saying was true because of who I am. You know, so
I don't know. I like it.
well, I'm the kind of guy that can and would do something this absurd. And so I was talking with Eve, and you know, talk about using peculiar endeavors and undertakings to your advantage, something that I'm looking to do more and more every day. And
Something very natural to
Still there.
and of course, and speaking of playing to his advantage, right? Because you know, there is no better creature on this planet to play to
Definitely.
humanity of than a woman. I mean, a woman has inexplicably large vanities that he can play with. So I'm on the phone and I go, Aiden, I'm giving this 25-hour speech here.
Just took his coat off.
I'm giving this 25-hour speech here, and she said, really? I said, yeah, I've got tons of topics. I wanted to talk with you tonight. We were going to talk sometime beginning of the week. I wanted to talk with you tonight because I can't talk with you tomorrow. And so we conducted this conversation on the understanding that I wouldn't be able to talk tomorrow. But then I said, wait a second. I think I just might have to talk to you tomorrow. And she said, why? I said, well, I have to call you with my cell phone from behind the podium. And she said, well, why would you call me from the podium during a 25-hour speech? For what possible purpose? And I said, well, it's pretty simple. I have a section in my outline called The Ideal Woman. I want to make sure that I give due credit to the person who will surely have hold in my mind most of the subject material for the section on the perfect or ideal woman.
Absolutely.
And even a girl as humble, and it's easy, I think, a lot easier to be humble than you, or humble at your choosing when you look like Eden, but even a girl's humble as her could be drawn into this plane to the vanities.
Be interesting if that thing ever gets hooked up, you could be talking to her via the internet.
Yeah, I know. The internet thing didn't work out because the people here are really uncooperative. What we're doing, I feel fine. What we're doing is, why do I not look fine?
You look good.
What we're doing, Dad, is we're recording it on the laptop, and once that's recorded in full, we're going to play that over the internet.
Is the news on the internet?
What's that?
Is the news on the internet? Channel 2?
Is Channel 2 news on the internet? What do you think?
You are.
Just what I mean, David. Tell us again.
Just like for example, we do job, I think that much. Then why are you That's right. Dad, would you say this is on the internet? I think you probably talked to them. The internet thing, we're actually, once we have it recorded now, we're going to start playing it tomorrow, and then I can watch it myself, which is kind of cool. What happened is to use this internet to link it up live. We needed like a network key and password, and they wouldn't give it to free because the woman who runs this in San Diego. School was kind of cooperative. So we said, what the hell, we're going to so much
By the way,
less
Channel 2, there might be a web site for Channel 2 broadcast. Pick up this segment on the news.
Yeah, at this point, because they're only filming throughout the night, I think we're just going to leave it as a story. I'm telling you that right now, I'm going to have at least 4 stories on it. 2 on 2 different stations. 2 stories on 2 different stations. Maybe even throughout this time, we can get Channel 4 to become at least somewhat interested in what's probably the most daring ad done in 20 years in Buffalo. Hopefully someone who can come out to cover me from Channel 4 as well. Again, I don't really understand why they wouldn't, quite frankly. It seems very reasonable.
I like your Georgetown banner.
It's a classic look. I told Elton all about
One of the flag up on the
I told Elton all about why why the colors are the colors for Georgetown and where the name Hoya came from, originating from Hoya Sassa. The flag was going to be up and they made us take down that thing.
flag holes. Is it just much more?
What do you guys do?
I was saying we could possibly hang the flag, but we'll see.
Maybe
Yeah.
we'll let you pull the flag holes over and attach the top of the flag to the top of the
That'd be a really good idea. You want to try that, guys?
What?
You want to try it? We could try putting the flag up using it. It's a really light flag. I mean, it's like paper. We could try hanging it from each one of these. The 10 feet or so that it is, I mean, they should be able to hold it up. I don't know if I exactly consent to this Canadian flag. We'll make sure this is tied behind the actual American flag.
That's on camera.
To the top of each.
It's on camera. Free, we're gonna try hanging the flag up behind me.
Okay.
For this thing. See, Mom, you were worried. Right now, I am nearing 3.5 hours into this thing. And I feel great. I mean, when I'm 3.5 hours in, I'm officially
25 hours.
1/8
I know.
of the way up. Oh, no, this thing is, I never quite was.
You heard my news? You heard the news?
You know,
Channel 2 News is bringing a camera.
it's,
And they're going to keep
this
it
is
on.
all brought a
We
lot
have
of
to stop
attention
with hips.
to the idea
Are we
of,
getting paid?
No.
well, quite frankly, the idea of prior planning. You always wonder why it's necessary for
We're doing a huge story on it.
campaigns to have such a huge dance team. And I guess I realized
We gotta find a way to
because
plug corporate.
it's so difficult to get this
Overnight
stuff
while
all
the
planned.
dog
There's
is
so many-
open, sign
so many
it.
things to consider. Can someone bring a chair over here? You think? So we can try.
Yeah, that lady didn't look really interested. Like she was just sitting there watching and taking notes. They were here for a while.
And I wanted more than an hour and a half.
Please. So
I was surprised.
this is important in.
They're coming back too.
Put a
You know what time?
table over the top of that circle.
Tomorrow morning, I think.
Do you know what time to bring the camera though?
And the idea of
Oh, the Channel 2 News camera? Any minute.
Oh, that was channel 7. That was channel 2 here earlier?
Yeah. They were the first people who got here,
you know,
remember?
the
Yeah.
importance of the dancing. That really brings to mind the idea of a campaign in the enormity of the elements that go into it. I mean, it used to sound like, there you go, just wrap that around. It won't look pretty, but it'll look better than nothing, right? There you go, Elton. You're the man. You're the man. Okay, now just rip it off. We'll see how it goes. You didn't speak on it. So to pull this into the exact same thing. Oh, careful.
I can cereals.to.
No. Pull it further. Pull it further out. So, further out. Further out. But you attach it a level. Attach it so it's level. You gotta, oh, why don't you come up here and say good smart to you?
You must have wanted this.
What?
She doesn't care. I'm down with squad. Presented my steps yesterday.
What'd you do?
Mike, you turn.
The website that Dave and I built.
So, the enormity of putting together.
Dave,
presidential
it's all yours.
campaign. There you go. But try to do it, Elton, so that so let's see, the front is healing over. Yeah, what you gotta do is that it doesn't. The enormity of putting together a presidential campaign, that's going to really bad. We need to hold it tight at the top better. Mike, can you come hold this thing? All over. Here you go, here, come watch out. I'll keep talking. But
Is that going to stay? That's not going to stay. It's top
see, we can't keep it from healing down in the middle because of the way it's taped over there. That wasn't Elton's fault, but oh well. You guys have got to work on that for what's no. The problem is the way it's.
At least we got it on camera.
Jeffrey, Buffalo News is coming.
What's that?
Buffalo News.
What do you mean the Buffalo News is
I
coming?
called them.
Why would you call it? This was a really bad idea. Yeah, it's going to ruin the corners of the. It's going to ruin the corners of the flag. We remove it. And we'll see if we can. We're getting there.
You guys keep
Make sure this doesn't fall. Put a chair on the water.
Lots of this. Food shopping just not.
That's not going anywhere now. Perfect. Don't move. All right. This is already held up. How's it look now for you?
Oh my God.
This is already what?
Hey,
It looks good.
Dave, adjust the camera.
It's good.
So, we have equipped our background. This is a little bit more appropriate now, I dare say. Thank you, Elton. Thank you, boys. I need you to come through. How's it look in the background? Good? Three?
You want to see? The problem is the bottom of the flag is your waistline, so you can see where there's no flag.
Yeah, that's a problem. Can you raise it up a little bit?
Yeah. Then it's just going to be like your head.
Three, but that thing right there, that's just proof. You You see what I'm saying?
That I'm not going to see the Georgetown thing, and you're going to have no walking space.
Just play the tape.
That tape is just for authenticity. How's it look in general? That good or not? It doesn't look that good? No.
That's an American flag.
Better than nothing.
It's better than
Just
nothing.
rip the Canadian flag off.
Well,
It's got those things behind there.
That looks better.
You guys let me know what you want for dinner. I'll bring you all dinner.
should we take it back down, Ed? Or does it look better than nothing?
Oh, he looks fine on camera.
Stars stripes, not look bad. I'm talking. I'm just saying. I want to make sure that I have the right background.
Didn't say anything. He carried it in front of them.
Originally,
I'm just-
I guess what I'll do now,
And they
seeing
get
as we're going to have guests
So we have
trickling
keep
in and out throughout the day, is I was going to read a lot more during the day. I wanted to preserve myself for a little bit later, but I don't want to disappoint my parents.
Jeff.
Especially, no.
You need to save your voice for the middle of the night.
That's what I'm doing, Mom. So,
I'm nervous, Rocco.
for just a little while, I'll do a little bit of extemporaneous.
Jeffrey, are you
And, Mom, if you want to yield for a question, you need to ask me to yield for a question. I was
He's
going
not
to
allowed
cover
to stop.
a little bit more.
Jeffrey, you can stop for a little
In
bit.
regards to, in regards to this extemporaneous outline I have here, I think that my dad might particularly enjoy the section that I wanted to do for a little while on judicial nominations. Because
Jeffrey, move that.
Mom, stop. I'm serious.
The cooler
Stop.
doesn't look good there.
I have this section on judicial nominations, and it's funny because the controversy over how this nominations process goes can never be fully addressed. Not within our current political environment, for a few reasons. The first is that things are far too partisan. There's no one side which would yield to allow for reforms or for the necessary changes of another. But more importantly, it's to come and go, our judicial nominations. A justice on the Supreme Court will die or will retire, and the president will try to quell for as long as he can rumors about who he might or might not nominate, and then judicial nomination hearings will be held. And this all happens in the process of like 2 weeks. And we become so embroiled in the nominee and in the fights taking place over the nominee that no matter how we want to change things, the public discourse, the general debate on the topic has shifted before we can ever really address the problems that lie at the center. Of course, it's important to recognize, first and foremost, right off the bat, that the Senate has a constitutional obligation to be a part of the judicial nomination and appointment process. It's not pure vanity, though I call 99% these judicial hearings. It does say in the Constitution that the Senate is required to advise and consent for all judicial nominees. Advise and consent. Now, as a part of what many consider an unwritten constitution, this advise and consent has kind of been contorted and taken to mean much more than the framers probably originally intended. And I've already talked a little bit about people making the Constitution simply whatever they'd like it to be, but this might be an example, might not, but it's the way that it is. So to discuss the topic within the current paradigm of how judicial nominations work and hearings work, and not as much to complain about that framework and its origins, would require that we accept, the fact that judicial nomination hearings are real, they happen, and there's not much that can be done to change the fact that they're actually happening. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't change the way that they are potentially conducted. There's no need to make these judicial hearings as overly political as they have become. There's no need for them to become objects of the current political partisan bickering of the day. There's no need for them to be taken up as if they were just another political hot potato bouncing around the Capitol that day. Ronald Reagan had a great quote once that said, government is too important for the government. And in a lot of ways that applies right here. The process of choosing our judges, the arbitrators in our society, Supreme Court members who will have a life tenure, and Supreme Court members who will make decisions that will far outlive them and any president who may have appointed him or her. That job of placing them in that position of absolute supreme power is too important to leave to politicians. Now, of course, we need to, but at the same time, we've seen how politicians have absolutely corrupted the process. They've corrupted the process by making it way over political, and they spend way too much time trying to use it as a platform to express particular judicial beliefs, rather than taking the time to examine the candidate himself or herself, rather than taking the time to consider the legal and judicial philosophy of the candidate himself. Well, the senators, and unfortunately this has been something that's happened in both parties, of course, never as viciously in the Republican Party as it has happened in the Democratic Party. This has been an instance where they've used these nominee hearings, which are intended to judge whether someone is fit to be a judicial arbitrator in our society, to express their platform, to express their ideas on what judges should be like. For Chuck Schumer to continue to expand the Commerce Clause like it's a goddamn balloon, and for even a guy like DeWine to campaign for his re-election like what happened during the Alito hearings. And those senators trying to seize the limelight of a nominee process as important as judicial nominations is in part what leads to this overly political system. An overly political system which is damaging our ability to choose the best men for the job. I know me and my dad have talked about this as an example, but we have lost phenomenal nominees because of this terribly thwarted system. Good men who should be serving today, good men, brilliant men, who would be fair, brilliant men who would remain devoted to our most sacred texts of governance, and people who actually believe in the Constitution and inherent rights that Constitution guarantees have been shut out of the job. Either they've been denied by the Senate, or in even worse case, they have refused to even be considered by a president for nomination because they don't want to go through that process of judicial hearings. Clarence Thomas wrote an amazing speech that I'll read in a little bit, probably like 3 in the morning when no one's listening, about, it's called Phenom Crew. And it's a speech about his struggle with the judicial nomination process, the politics of character destruction, the way that the system has been taken and absolutely hijacked by special interests. And he explains how nomination hearings, and I know I've said this again, I've said this before, but I'll say it again, nomination hearings have become overly political to the point where they don't seek the best nominee, they seek the politically expedient course. As the opposition has found it absolutely efficient, as they found it convenient to use political strategy to sink what should be a much more profound, much deeper process of selecting the correct judges, as they have used political strategy to bring the downfall of the judicial nominees. Well, presidents in return, and in both parties, but again, it's been reactionary, necessary reactionary strategy on the part of Republicans much more than on the part of Democrats as a result of much more vicious Democrats than vicious Republicans. But Republican presidents have had to respond to this kind of problem. And how do you respond to politics in the judicial nominations process? Well, you don't respond by remaining remaining more steadfast in your devotion to keep politics out. You had to, as you would fight fire with fire, fight politics with politics. So all of a sudden, a president can't make an overly qualified nomination like Judge Borg. Can't make a nominee like Judge Borg and bring it to Congress because he knows that, he might be too controversial. He might not bring over enough senators to the opposing party. And that was never, ever intended to be the actual purpose of nominations hearings. It really wasn't. Were you guys going to do something?
Yeah, they're taking it down. Before the news gets here.
Okay. Well, why don't you do it now? It's okay.
I gotta eat my wing.
Okay. When we go through a process like we have, and when senators begin to use nomination hearings not to judge the fitness of a nominee to serve on the bench, but rather to air their personal beliefs or to direct their anger with the current administration at the administration for the use of the nominee, then we've corrupted the system. The best example of this has to be Judge now Supreme Court Justice Alito, when Judge Alito went through the nominations process. Patrick Leahy was the ranking Democrat on the Senate Judicial Committee. And Patrick Leahy obviously has some qualms with the current president. I think it's pretty obvious. If you can turn the corner a little bit, you can turn the corner a little bit, sorry. Obviously has some qualms with the current president. And he took up this banner of executive power. Executive power. Now, exactly how many cases Judge Alito had actually ruled in regards to executive power was yet to be seen, and whether or not his judgments in regards to executive power were even relevant in the discussion of his nomination was yet to be seen. But yet, Patrick Leahy knew, where can I attack this president? He happened to be going more for strong points with his liberal base, especially out of Vermont where he's from. But more importantly, he was looking for where he could take shots at the president. And he figured there's no better place in regards to the recent NSA wiretapping scandal, in regards to the jagged culture of corruption scandals, and Nancy Pelosi promises to get the rascals out of Washington. There's no better place to attack this president in regards to philosophy, in regards to policy, than to do so in the area of executive power. Executive power, executive power, executive power. So no longer did it make any difference that Sam Alito might have been qualified in every other area. No longer did it make any difference, quite frankly, that Sam Alito was in fact qualified in regards to executive privilege. No conservative or conservative-leaning judge, I would say, from what I could see and from the reports I saw, did more to restrain an executive when such restraint was necessary than Sam Alito. Yet that made absolutely no difference to Patrick Leahy, who was determined to take shots at this president and realized that the only place, or the best place to take shots at this president was in regards to executive power. And that is exactly what he did. Now, another area in regards to judicial nominations that I'd really like to address is the idea of interest groups. And I actually take a much better interpretation, or I'd have to say judgment, on judicial nominations in regards to interest groups than others. I believe in interest groups. I know that interest groups have a constitutionally protected right to exist. I know that they're an important part of the process, and I'm not one to tell a group of Americans who want to organize their cause in a free society that they are not to do so, that they should not have the right or should not be able to act without criticism when they come together for a common cause. But I can tell you that interest groups do go a little out of control. I can tell you the truth is that the interest groups that are a little out of control are these women's groups and the liberal interest groups. Okay, they are absolutely out of control, and they are ruining the judicial process. When Borg was nominated, and I know I keep bringing up Bork, so I just want to say again, he's probably, in my mind, would have been probably the greatest Supreme Court justice to have ever lived. I've read a few of his essays, and his ideas are so fair. They're not even as notably conservative as they are true to the law, as they are true to the Constitution. And it is an absolute travesty, that we had to lose Bork from the judgeship. And I think that it was recognized as the years passed following that and following the torpedoes of political dishonesty that Ted Kennedy sent throughout the judicial nomination. I think despite all that, it became obvious that Bork was really a very qualified candidate. That's why now when a good candidate or a seemingly conciliatory candidate or qualified candidate comes up for nomination and gets attacked ruthlessly, it's referred to as Bork being that candidate. But in regards to the interest group, when Bork came up, the interest groups, in a lot of ways, convinced someone like Ted Kennedy that he could go out with his personal attacks, completely dishonest and completely untrue, and basically make them open to the public. That is not nearly as bad as what happened in the case of David Souter, though. David Souter, as we all know, is one of the greatest turncoats in American history. I mean, I put this guy in the camp with Benedict Arnold, and I mean that seriously. He's nominated by George Bush in, I think it was 1989, maybe 1990. And Souter is supposed to be a reliable conservative, not even what you would consider a very, very strict constructionist or racialist. A reliable conservative certainly would certainly be good for a vote against Roe, would be good for pro-economy rulings, would be good for congressional restraint, judicial restraint rulings. But he wasn't a firebrand. He was not a firebrand. There are nominees who are much more controversial than Souter was. And Souter is very kind-natured too, and in the world of political nature and atmosphere, that's important. And Souter seemed like the kind of person that should make it through relatively easily, just like Ginsburg being a female prior to now. But,
Is it recording, Chapman?
back to the point, Souter, on the day of the vote, the National Organization for Women,
It's definitely slowing down.
along with Pro-Choice America, the two of the most wretched interest groups in the United States, absolutely wretched groups, hateful, mean-spirited, disgusting groups that will play dirty and will personally attack someone if they hold different views. I can guarantee you that if the women of any of those groups were sitting here today, tomorrow, it would be blasted across the front page of Buffalo News that they consider me a hater of women and a hater of everything that is important to the women of this country. They are that vicious, they are that violent. And I don't know if you remember this, Dad, seeing as you were around back then, but, they were hanging out flyers that said, vote for Souter and women die. Do you remember this? It was a white sheet. This is a true story. It was a white sheet of paper, and there was a stop sign, a hexagon for a stop sign in red, and it said, vote for Souter and women die. I mean, I can't even imagine what the framers of the Constitution, who decided, wow, it'd be a good idea to have a high seniority executive council, really is what the Senate, what they picture the Senate to be. We want to have them advise and consent the president on nominees. And we get to the point today where you nominate someone who isn't even that controversial, isn't even that ideologically on the fringe, and all of a sudden vote for Souter and women die. It was the most atrocious thing imaginable. Welcome, Mr. Edler. It was the most atrocious thing I had. It was the most atrocious thing that I had ever seen. And it's just another example. It's just another example of how the process of judicial nominations has become completely over-politicized. I mean, completely over-politicized. Of course, women didn't die when Souter was confirmed, as I touched upon already. Souter proved to be one of the greatest turncoats in modern political history by refusing to defend the right to be on board in abortion cases, and making cases and making rulings in cases like New London, where he shredded the Constitution and attacked the ownership rights of United States citizens. That's a topic for another discussion. I'm not a David Souter supporter, but the important part of the story is that you saw on the day of his vote for confirmation, vote for David Souter, and women will die. Nothing can be further from the truth in regards to the rulings he's made over the past 15 years. And it showcases the terrible effect that